got through this. Easy for listening. I was able to do it. Easy for dancing. I'm not a great lover of cats. That's my fear. You're a disgrace, you are. Not me. That's my fear. You're a disgrace, you are.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Have Your Say, one-on-one shadowboxing. Today my guest at the WTV studios, Professor Paul Connett from the United States of America.
Hi Tibor, great to be back again.
Yes, Paul was our guest before, sort of 3 years ago at least, and that time the topic was?
Fluoridation.
Fluoridation. And what's changed since then? Almost nothing. The topic again is fluoridation, but we're looking at now today from a different angle. Paul, we know God or someone smart created Earth and the inhabitants of Earth, including mankind. And God made a mistake in the creation, I think, because left out fluoride.
Yes, if you believe the dentist, God made a mistake, or nature made a mistake, because the level of fluoride in mother's milk, baby's first meal, where you'd expect to find a nutrient, it's just not there. It's very, very low, 0.004 parts per million. Or to put it a different way, a woman who bottle feeds her baby in Western Australia,
yes,
or Perth, is giving her baby 250 times more fluoride than nature or God intended.
Decided.
Yes.
So why is that? First of all, start with that. Okay, God was stupid, left out fluoride. We needed 2 million years to figure out what's really missing from our life. That's fluoride. And in the 50s, is the 1950s, is that, not
yes,
the 1850s, someone sit down and say, we know that God was stupid, so let's give the population of the Earth what they really need, and it's fluoride. How can we give that? Obviously, through our drinking water. Cheers on that.
Cheers.
And
non-fluoridated water.
And what's on the drinking water in WA? Fluoride. Who is put it in? The government, because they loves us. They're looking after us, and they're doing their basic duty. If God not done it, government will do it. Cheers.
Yes. Well, of course, it is extraordinary, isn't it? Basically, what the dentists and the promoters of fluoridation are saying is that every woman on this planet is deficient in fluoride. Every woman.
Since 1950s.
Since the beginning of time. They're
beginning
deficient.
of time.
Now, in fact, I asked the chief health officer of Victoria, I said, if fluoride was so good for baby's teeth, or anything in the baby,
yes,
why is the level so low in mother's milk? And you know what he said?
No.
He said, so Mother Nature has dealt some children a raw deal. Meaning the children that were unfortunate enough to have been born in an area which wasn't fluoridated.
That's just extraordinary, and it's a little bit shocking.
Yeah.
Do you think the people of Australia or elsewhere in the world, when fluoridization of water made by the government compulsory, they love that situation, they like it, or they not? Because in here, in WA,
yeah,
what we know is now we got a political party,
yes,
even based on
yes,
no fluoride in the WA waters.
yes.
And they got 5 points in here. What do you think about this movement and the 5 points?
Well, I think it's very important because these citizens who formed this party for several years, and I've been helping them for several years, have tried everything. They've tried demonstrations, they've tried petitions, they've had delegations to Parliament. Nothing has happened. And every time we bring the science out, it's always trumped by politics. Politics trumps science. And so what they're doing is to fight fire with fire, politics with politics. They want to get 1 or 2 people into the upper house so that they can constantly bring the science to the attention of the health ministry, the bureaucrats. At the moment, that science is hidden from the decision makers.
My opinion is that science is dead. I don't know who killed science, Paul.
Well, after 21 years of fighting this thing, I think it may be the regulatory agencies, like the EPA, the FDA, the CDC in the United States. The CDC promotes fluoridation, it's biased, it uses propaganda. So they've killed science. The FDA has never approved fluoride as a drug to ingest. After 70 years, they are not doing their job. Why? And then you have the Environmental Protection Agency, clearly more beholden to the pressures coming from the pro-fluoridation lobby to keep fluoridation than to take fluoride or to force fluoride out of the water, because now we know it is neurotoxic. It damages the brain.
What do you mean now you know? I think from the very beginning, fluoride is identified as a neurotoxin.
Well, no, I think from the beginning, I think it was stupid.
Yes.
A medical practice that puts a medicine in the water is such a clumsy way of delivering medicine. You can't control the dose. You can't control who it goes to. It's violating the individual's right to informed consent. So it should never have started. It is a stupid practice, and we've never done this with any other substance. But to go to the science,
Yes.
fluoride is neurotoxic. We have over 300 animal and human studies which shows that fluoride can damage the brain. In animals, it changes animals' behavior. It reduces their ability to learn and memorize in mazes and so on. And in humans, we have 23 when I published this book in 2010, now 50 IQ studies. Out of 57, so 7 didn't, but 50 IQ studies showing that children in high fluoride villages.
It's not 50 people in the IQ studies, sorry. 50 different studies.
Studies done in China, in Iran, in Mexico, and in India at different times by different research teams in different areas of the country like China. Most of them have come from China. Have found that the average IQ in high fluoride villages is lower than in low fluoride villages. And if you take the science and use scientific methods to determine the dose in the BEST study,
Yes.
study done in 2003 and added on to in 2010, you find that 1.4 milligrams
Yes.
of fluoride a day, 1.4 milligrams of fluoride a day, lowers the IQ of the children in that study by 5 IQ points. 1.4 milligrams. Now that
So what
is
we got in this one?
Okay. You have 1.4 milligrams in 1.4 liters of this water. I think this is about half a liter.
Yes, approx, yes.
Maybe a little less. 3 of these glasses would give a child 1.4 milligrams of fluoride. Has the potential of lowering its IQ. This is preposterous. I mean, when you consider, this is the most serious thing about what I'm saying.
Yes.
If you lowered the population's IQ by 5 IQ points, you wouldn't notice the difference with the average person. The average person would go from 100 to 95. Parent wouldn't notice.
Yeah.
Teacher wouldn't notice. You certainly wouldn't notice walking up the street.
Yes.
But if you look at the normal distribution, the famous bell-shaped curve, it's what happens at the two ends that is significant. Children with an IQ above 130 are very bright, even geniuses. That's
Yes.
one wing. The other wing is children with an IQ less than 70, mentally handicapped. You shift the whole population over by 5 IQ points, you halve the number of very bright geniuses in your society and double the number of mentally handicapped. Any politician that knows that is either utterly irresponsible, utterly stupid, to continue to allow this stuff to be put in the drinking water. It is insane. It's insane. It's huge economic and social ramifications of
Paul,
doing that.
The politicians say these bloody studies coming from Third World.
Yes.
Okay, so that's, well, I almost say Third World War. No, that's not a war yet.
Not a war,
and not
not
the
yet,
Third
no.
World War, definitely.
Yeah.
But the politicians say these studies coming from the Third World. So we are Western society. We are much more clever. We know what we're doing. They don't know anything about life. So how do you want to get some recognition of these studies? Because India, China, Mexico, and all these countries, they say, oh, no, they're not really sophisticated people. They don't know what they're talking about. IQ, probably they never got that much of IQ as we have. So it's not relevant to England or to United States or, matter of fact, to Australia. Because what's happened in here, just last year, Queensland introduced compulsory fluoridation.
But they stopped it now. They introduced it.
So what's happened then? They introduced it and they stopped it.
They changed the government. They changed the government. The new government dropped the mandatory requirement, and as a result, about 50 communities in Queensland immediately either stopped the plans to put it in, or actually, if they put it in, pulled it out. So yes, we have a little bit of freedom left in Australia. It happens to be in Queensland. But you're absolutely right, Tibor. You're absolutely right when you say that these regulatory agencies or these politicians via the regulatory agencies say, oh, those studies are from China, India, etc. But it's a catch-22 because they say, oh, these studies are from India, China. There's no evidence in Australia or New Zealand or Canada or the handful of fluoridated countries that fluoride lowers IQ. Because they're not doing the studies.
They're not doing studies.
They're not doing the studies, but when studies...
Why not?
Because I believe they're protecting this holy practice of fluoridation. They're working backwards. They have, for some reason, and I don't understand their brain behavior, but for some reason they feel obliged to keep this policy, this practice going at all costs. And so if any evidence is brought forward by citizens or scientists, or in my book, it's 80 pages of documentation, if we bring this forward, the science is junk science, the scientist is a junk scientist, or the citizen is a member of the Flat Earth Society. So they have a way of avoiding any evidence which shows harm, and then they don't do their own studies. You can count on the fingers of one hand or less than one hand, studies done in Australia on health. Study after study after study on teeth. Teeth, teeth, and teeth, as if teeth was the only tissue in the body. I think they see a human being like a huge mouth with little legs on it. They're not worried about our kidneys, they're not worried about our brains, our endocrine system, our thyroid function. It's utterly amazing. This is like a 70-year program written by Monty Python.
On that note, Paul, we have to go for a short break, but please stay with us because after the break we're coming back with more science on why we should not have fluoride in our drinking water. Hello and welcome back to Have Your Say, one-on-one shadowboxing. We are continuing our discussion with Professor Paul
Connett.
Yes, it's very cunning, don't want to say. Okay. Hello and welcome back to One-on-One Shadowboxing, Have Your Say. We are continuing our discussion with Professor Paul Connett on the fluoridization of the waters in WA or in Australia or in England or in the United States.
Yes, and that's important because 95% of the world does not fluoridate. I mean, very, very, very few countries fluoridate their water. Australia
because
is
they
an
are
exception.
behind of time, I think.
No,
you know, in Western world, politicians used to say, we have to show the world what to do and what's right and what's wrong. And the Americans even say, we have to enforce the world to do the right things always. So because we're doing fluoridation and the 95% is not doing it, they are stupid, we are geniuses, and we have to force them to do the fluoridation.
Well, it definitely is an Anglo-American thing. And most of the countries which are fluoridated, and most of the countries have more than 50% of their population
fluoridated. But I think all those countries, the 95% of the world, they not have fluoridation, okay, in the drinking waters, so they not have any of these left in those countries.
Well, that's the
idea. They just not, they couldn't eat food.
That's not true. In fact,
we're doing it because of these ones. So if those 95% is not doing it, they lost all those. So they got protocols, nothing else.
I think you're articulating the religious belief part of this. You would believe that, wouldn't you, if you thought that fluoridation, swallowing fluoride, reduced tooth decay. That's what you would expect, that their teeth would be falling out.
But the Europeans are stupid because they're not doing it.
The World Health Organization database shows that tooth decay in 12-year-olds is coming down as fast in all the non-fluoridated countries as the fluoridated ones, if not faster. That's data from the 1960s to the 2000s. You cannot show a difference in tooth decay between fluoridated countries and non-fluoridated countries with 12-year-olds. And that's the scientific data. And there are many other
We
studies.
will change that, Paul.
Well,
if
but
United States and Australia and the allies really got,
Yeah.
they will together, and they will win all the wars, but they all lost. They will win this war as well, not just the war against terrorism.
Well, you notice also that Western Europe is against nuclear power in the main. It's also against genetically modified organisms, and they're against fluoridation. Maybe they're not so stupid after all. Maybe they recognize
Or
that
Europe
nature
is just-
doesn't want fluoride in our bodies.
Or Europe is just getting to the end, so that's just decaying now. if they're not following the leaders of the real leaders of the world, the Anglo-Saxon leaders. But Paul, what else fluoride is do to us when we're drinking it? Okay, it's not good for us. It's toxic. It damages the brain. What else is happening?
It damages the teeth. It damages the bones. We have names for those. You have dental fluorosis and you have skeletal fluorosis. If you go to parts of India and China, you'll find all the kids have dental fluorosis and the elderly people are stooped over with their bones crippled. Now, we don't see crippling skeletal fluorosis in our countries, in our fluoridated countries. But we probably see the first symptoms of fluoride poisoning of the bones because they're identical to arthritis. Aching joints, aching bones, pains in the joints, pains in the bones. And in Australia, you have an epidemic of arthritis. And yet, there's no study in Australia seeing if there's a link between fluoride exposure, lifelong fluoride exposure, and arthritis. You've got to look at the best studies. And better still, do your own studies. If these studies from China are not
Unreliable,
good enough,
yes.
you've had 70 years to do these studies yourself. And so this is the big difference. The governments of China and India, Iran and Mexico and a few other countries, they know that their people are getting too much fluoride because they can see it.
So where are they getting it in China, India,
It's
and
naturally
Mexico?
occurring.
It's naturally
Naturally
occurring,
occurring,
yes.
yes.
And they're
In the-
worrying about that natural thing.
They're worrying about what they are trying to do is to find the safe level. What level do they need to aim for with their defluorination plants? What level do they want to aim down to so they can protect most
So
of
they
the
got
population?
fluoride naturally in their waters,
Yeah.
and they want to take it out, not
Yes.
put more in like
Yeah,
we're putting
yeah.
in.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting, the play on the word natural. The promoters like to say fluoridation is natural. The fluoride is naturally in the water and use that as if nature had approved it. But we know what nature thinks of fluoride.
It's not good.
It's not good. It's not in mother's milk. We don't have any substance in the body that uses fluoride. So we know that nature doesn't. The levels of fluoride in the water are a reflection of geology, rocks. What rocks the water? The rocks came before biology, right?
Yes.
So nothing to do with nature, nothing to do with any biological judgment on fluoride. But nature does know that fluoride is toxic, has kept it out of our bodies, kept it out of our babies, and water fluoridation removes nature's protection. I can't stress that enough. And the first thing that the government should do, the new government in Western Australia, is to warn parents not to bottle feed their babies with fluoridated tap water. And
So
if the
what sort of water not have fluoride in Australia, for example?
Spring water is probably your safest bet. Then if you could use reverse osmosis water. Most of your big supermarkets carry different kinds of water which doesn't have fluoride in it. That's what parents should use. But what do you do with low-income families? The government should also say, well, we think this is good for low-income children, but so their parents should be able to protect their babies from fluoride, use non-fluoridated water. And the irony is the target
Yes.
of fluoridation is low-income families, because it's true that 80%, or at least in the United States, 80% of tooth decay in the United States is concentrated in 20% of the population, low incomes. When you have low income, and you get really bad condition called baby bottle tooth decay. If a baby sucks on a bottled
Yes.
sugared water, Ribena, fruit juice,
Yes.
milk, they suck on it for hours on end, and it rots the top teeth to the gums, the milk teeth to the gums.
Yeah.
And that leads to children having operations under anesthetic. Young children, very traumatic, very expensive. But you can tell it's baby bottle tooth decay. When they hold up a picture and say, this is what happens if you don't fluoridate your water. Nonsense. The rate of baby bottle tooth decay is the same in fluoridated as non-fluoridated communities.
So
but
it's not the
very
water.
different between high-income and low-income communities. So if somebody sees this picture, they held up and they say, this is what happens if you don't have fluoridated water, and they show these top teeth rotted to the gums and bottom teeth, you know it's baby bottle tooth decay because the bottom teeth are protected by the tongue when the baby is sipping on that bottle. Guess what? Let me give you an example of politics. In Queensland,
Yes.
the day before the Parliament voted for mandatory fluoridation, I think this was 2004, the day before, all the MPs received a postcard. And on that postcard, there were 4 photographs. A photograph which says, this is what teeth look like if the child is drinking fluoridated water. And this is what teeth look like if the child is not drinking fluoridated water. Ghastly teeth.
Yeah.
But if you look closely, it's baby bottle tooth decay. They have 2
So there's nothing
pictures
to do
of
with
that.
the fluoride one.
And then on the side, they have a picture of a young child having a tooth extracted under anesthesia. So this went to all the parliamentarians. They thought, if we don't fluoridate the water, the teeth will look. And it's an absolute lie. And that lie was coming not from politicians, not from activists, but from the government. Queensland Health. The
Lobbied for.
lobbying for fluoridation using outright propaganda tactics.
But now it's over because Queensland is not healthy.
No, they were liberated by the next government. See, politics. You see, going back to this, fluoride-free Western Australia, fighting fire with fire. We've got to have some politicians in Parliament who know the science and can keep putting the science there when the wretched health department and the health minister produce propaganda. You know, the current health minister, John Day, is actually a dentist. We met him yesterday.
And what he said about fluoride in the water.
Well, I gave him a copy of our book.
Yes.
I said, I think you'd like to read this. He took it. It was very gracious, and the discussion was very cordial. But it was very clear that he was very pro-fluoridation, and he was just repeating the mantra, you know, citing the agencies which says it's fine, it's safe and effective, and so on.
So, Paul, before we finish,
Yes.
what's happening with your book? This is a propaganda book. That's what the government say.
Yeah.
It is a propaganda book. So why don't you fight with this book and science against science?
Yeah, that's
what
I'd
is
like to-
keep you away from that?
We
fight?
had hoped that these 3 scientists, we've got a retired chemist,
Yes.
that's me, a retired physicist, that's James Beck, MD, PhD, and Spenny Micklem, a biologist, retired biologist. We had hoped that this book would raise the level of debate, that we were understated things, not overstated them, and every scientific statement is referenced with 80 pages of science.
So why don't we have another book which is saying your book is rubbish?
That's right. This is what I was expected. If it had been the other way around, if they published a book called The Case for Fluoride, within a few weeks, we would have got all our experts from around the world, chapter by chapter, almost paragraph by paragraph, we would have rebutted it in a few weeks. It's been 7 years. 7 years, and there's been no scientific critique from the proponents. But they still call us anti-science. I mean, what's anti-science about this? 3 scientists documenting, making transparent the whole argument. I was asked to talk before the Ministry of Health in Wellington, New Zealand,
Yes.
just after that book was published. And I was only expecting a couple of people. There were 20 people from the Ministry of Health. Went through my book. I said, when I got there, I said, look, we've done everything you could expect from 3 scientists who are opposed to something. We've laid out our case. It's transparent. It's documented. Now it's your turn. This is your practice. You promote this. Please get some of your civil servants together and produce a written response to this book.
And?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing, nada. Except it didn't stop the Minister of Health himself going on mainstream television and accusing opponents of fluoridation of misrepresenting the literature. Well, where did we misrepresent the literature? Where is your documentation? Where is the misrepresentation in this book? I had another example. I was arguing in Portland, Oregon, because they stopped, they had a successful fight to keep fluoridation out of Portland. I had this argument. She says, oh, you just misrepresent the science. I said, I've got my book here. I said, show me one page in this book where I've misrepresented the science. And she said, oh, it's the whole book, the whole book.
The whole book.
Afterwards, I met her on the pavement. I said to her, we got a little discussion. It was a little heated. I said, have you actually read my book? And she said no.
That's good. Paul, I wish you good luck for the fight for another 10 years, and we probably get rid of the 5% of the world population who forced to drink fluoride water, and then we got the clear world.
Just check box number 1 above the line.
And on that note, we got the end of this episode. On that note, we're ending this episode, and please, thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Now, please come back next week, same time, same channel. Have your say, one-on-one shadowboxing.